Today on the BPN Insights podcast with Chip Kispert, our guest is Sheryl O'Connor, CEO and co-founder of Income Conductor, the retirement income planning platform changing how advisors build, communicate, and deliver income strategies for clients in retirement. Chip and Sheryl will cover the vision behind the platform, what it looks like in a client meeting, and where retirement income planning is headed. Right now, here's Chip.
Thanks, RJ. Sheryl, welcome to the BPN Insights podcast.
Well, thanks for having me, Chip.
So one of my questions I always love to start with is, tell us how Income Conductor came to life and what it is making possible for advisors today.
So I've been in the industry for over 25 years. And like many people in the industry, I was primarily focused on helping clients accumulate, invest, and grow their money, right? But when the 2008-2009 global market crash occurred, I saw firsthand how that was affecting people moving into retirement and people in retirement. And I knew there had to be a more effective strategy than what the industry and the tools were providing. A strategy that could help retirees stay confident through crashes like that. And that's when I discovered time segmentation and teamed up with Phil Lubinsky, an advisor who first conceived of the bucketing approach to retirement income planning back in the 1980s. And along with Tom O'Connor, we developed Income Conductor to support advisors using this approach to give clients the confidence to ride out those tough market periods.
Makes perfect sense. And we're going to dig a little deeper into Income Conductor. But as we're looking at kind of a problem that I see out there, and in our roundtables, we've covered this to some extent, but most advisors would say they do retirement income planning. What are they missing, and why has that gap been so hard to close?
Yeah, I think it's pretty simple. Advisors are doing retirement income planning the same way they did 30 years ago, using the same rules of thumb that have, kind of perpetuated in the industry. For example, they run all plans assuming clients will live to 95 or 100 versus using reliable actuarial longevity projections. They test a withdrawal rate, like the 4% rule, versus creating a cash flow that's customized to each client's spending goals using individualized expense inflationary increases. They don't include critical healthcare expenses or use national averages versus using personalized healthcare and long-term care expense data. And while all this has been going on, the world has changed drastically. Retirement is much more complex. Products have evolved. We have access to really great personalized data in many areas and can easily integrate it into our technology. And most of all, baby boomers are very different from their parents' generation, and they have different expectations of what they want and need from financial advisors.
There's one other problem in there. And that from the if I look at a traditional financial planning platform, disbursement, I don't find it's really taken into account for some of the other programs. Can you comment on that?
Well, I have talked with the heads of the major financial planning tools when I was developing Income Conductor, and they were very clear about the fact that they did not focus on that distribution period. They really focused on accumulation planning for clients and advisors. So I think it's been a long neglected area, and I think the the massive wave of baby boomers into retirement has kind of woken people up to the fact that this has been neglected and it needs attention.
Yeah, it's for us it's fascinating. I remember we were in a roundtable, it might have been 3 years ago, and this was a hot subject. And it is an area where this disbursement strategy and it needs to be put in place. If you look at financial planning today, it's fabulous at gathering assets. I agree with you right there. Let's kind of change gears a little bit. You just alluded to it. Lots of planning platforms out there. But what makes Income Conductor really special? Can you walk us through what it looks like when an advisor sits down with a client using Income Conductor?
Yeah, and I even want to take a step back. So even before that client meeting, I think that technology needs to help advisors position themselves as retirement income specialists. This is a really complex, unique area of a client's financial life cycle. So we provide training, a suite of sales and marketing tools, and a proven process on how to use those tools to really differentiate themselves from other advisors the client may be considering going with. There's a lot at stake with over 124 trillion in assets in motion over the next decade or two. It's the expert, not the generalist, who will win and retain those clients. So that's the first step. Once you put the client into the meeting, client conversations are important, but it's the experience the client remembers. If it's a great experience, you've locked in a lifelong client. Most planning tools are back office tools. They're complicated with multiple input screens and steps to go through. And the only thing the client sees are the generated reports. And that's not a memorable experience,
Right.
Especially if they're seeing the same reports from different advisors that they're interviewing. Income Conductor is built to be used in collaboration with the client. All the planning is done on a single, very visually appealing screen that updates in real time when data is added or modified. The client can clearly see their plan coming into, taking shape, and the impact their decisions have on their overall plan within seconds. So because clients are engaged, they have a much deeper understanding of the components of their plan, and advisors save hours in planning time. So that's really a great experience for both the advisor and the client, and very different from what other tools offer.
So Sheryl, you talked about the experience. I love the interactivity of it. I mean, because you're able to pull the levers, so to speak, right? But when we look at kind of that experience today, is that an in-person experience or a virtual experience?
It's both. So we have advisors, who, because of the proclivity of Zoom and other webinar hosting tools, they have clients all over the country. They have clients, that take extended vacations. So they work with their clients over Zoom meetings, as well as in the office. And Income Conductor is perfect for that. They just pull up the application. It just totally engages the client, whether it's on their own computer screen or up on a big screen in a client conference room.
And I love that flexibility. Can you share, one of the things that you're a statistics person, a numbers person, advisors that adopt Income Conductor, how do they see their business change?
So a lot of our advisors use Income Conductor as a complement to a full financial planning tool like eMoney, Money Guide Pro, Right Capital. We are not a replacement for their tools, right? But Income Conductor really differentiates them in this space. And some of our advisors, Chip, have had such a success with gathering assets. Let's face it, baby boomers hold 50 to 60% of the wealth in this country. So they are really a very lucrative demographic to specialize in. And we've seen advisors double their AUM in 1 to 2 years. One of our RIAs at LPL credits its $25 billion in assets to using Income Conductor as part of their, overall strategy of working with high net worth business owners.
Yeah, and that's fascinating. And kudos to you all for really putting a terrific product together. One of the things also I hear is that, hey, great demo, tough implementation, right? Walk us through the adoption journey. Where typically it goes well, where maybe it gets a little harder. And, what does the advisor's practice look like when Income Conductor, is 2 years in?
Yeah, I think the transition from how they're doing retirement income planning now with the traditional financial planning tools to using Income Conductor can be an operational change for them. It's not just a story that's changed for the client. It's also a back office operation. And without a doubt, it does take more effort up front for an advisor to implement a time segmented plan than, like, let's say, putting the client's assets into a single portfolio and running an annual withdrawal test on it, or selling a single product like an annuity. But once the assets are situated and invested appropriately and the products purchased, Income Conductor makes it extremely easy to manage the plan. So we more than make up for that extra time up front by making it very easy across the next 25 to 30 years of retirement. Advisors don't think about that. They think about, what am I doing today? But retirement is a long game. And what we provide the advisor is a tracking and management platform that gives them daily plan performance. It gives them key analytics about the plan that inform client reviews and decisions. It sends alerts out to them that let them know that there are opportunities to take risk off the table and lock in the income the client needs, keep it from any additional market risk. And they don't tend to think of all the work they do with these other strategies over that 25 to 30 years that Income Conductor just takes off their plates.
You just covered a lot of ground there. We covered and one of the things I always love are kind of real life stories. Can you share a real life story where, one of your advisor customers really utilized the project or the product and, really that's a bell ringer for you? Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of what advisors experience is, first of all, they're a little bit hesitant to make that switch. But the thing that clinches it is when they present the Income Conductor plan to the client, when they pull up the application and they start working with it dynamically with the client. One advisor shared with us, and we hear variations of this story multiple times, that they actually had a client break down in tears in their office because she was so relieved when she saw this plan, because it gave her and her husband permission to retire. and enjoy the last phase of their life. And who wouldn't want that kind of reaction from their clients? This is what clients are looking for. So if advisors are willing to make that leap and, adjust their strategy a little bit in the retirement income distribution area and use Income Conductor, the rewards are multiple. And mostly it's going to be that, they're going to have very, very satisfied clients who are going to trust them.
And trust is key. Trust is absolutely key. So looking ahead, right? Obviously, products keep evolving, right? So you're building a roadmap for where income planning goes next. Are you building in AI, longevity risks, the full weight of the boomer decumulation arriving at once? Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, we keep evolving in two ways. Of course, enhancing the actual functionality for the advisor and the ease of use. So that's where a lot of that AI comes in. So we have plans this year to start incorporating AI to make the experience for the advisor better. But also, we're looking at how the challenges of retirement are evolving. So bringing in more personalized data, like long-term care data, and not just the costs themselves, but allowing the advisor and client to actually customize what their care situation is looking like in the future. I think that the successful firms in the future are going to have to evolve into a new paradigm of offering some additional satellite services. Over the past, maybe 10 years, we've seen the value proposition of the advisor move from asset manager to financial planner. Now, I think we need to expand that planning function, and it will open up new opportunities like specialties like retirement income and new sources of revenue. But especially in this later phase of life, as clients age, they're looking to their advisor to give them advice in areas that traditionally they weren't involved in. They're really looking for a Sherpa to guide them through these major life transitions in this last phase of life. Things like housing decisions, care assistance, end of life planning. And I'm not suggesting that, advisors become death doulas. They don't need to be experts in these areas. But the successful firms will be the ones that curate and partner with service providers who are experts in these areas and will help their clients navigate these major transitions safely. And I think the benefit to the advisor will be to develop a much deeper, more trusting relationship with both the clients and their families.
Covered a lot of ground there. So, what we've heard from you is that, the end investor customer has more trust, really enjoys the experience from the standpoint of it gives them comfort to some extent, right? The advisors have a nicer interaction, and they're building trust with that client, which is going to make it for a longer relationship. So let's change the gears a little bit, right? What is one change you would ask every advisor to make in how they approach income planning?
I would say, and this is kind of my wish for the industry as a whole, is be willing to adapt to new strategies, to new technologies. The strategies and the tools that helped firms succeed 10 or 20 years ago may not be the ones to help firms succeed in the future. Be open to change because clients are currently changing. Our global environment is changing, technology is changing, and we need to be open to new solutions that address the challenges of those changing environments.
Interesting. Good answer. Good answer. I think everything we're looking at, and we've seen over really the past 15, 20 years has been pretty static. I don't know about you, but I'll tell you this, the last couple of years have been so much change when it comes to technology. We need to go back to the relationship though. And because if we're looking forward, it's going to change even more, and it's going to change equally as fast with probably the insert of AI into what folks are doing, which also demands good data, right? All right. So I always love asking this question. It's my industry hit list, right? Who are 2 or 3 people or firms right now that you really admire? And why do you think they're worth watching?
So there are a couple that I feel have really thought through the larger strategy. So there's one RIA that I'm working with right now, and they are working on creating a seamless experience for individuals as they transition from their careers into retirement. And that means from plan participant to retirement wealth client. So for too long, firms have been focused on, either siloed into the ERISA business or the retail wealth business, right? And the two shall never mix. It's like oil and water. These forward-thinking advisory firms are developing the resources and expertise to serve clients in both of these phases. First, helping clients grow their wealth, and then seamlessly bridging or transitioning into them enjoying their wealth post-career and passing it on to the next generation. So that's one RIA that I think has a real vision for, creating this unbroken arc of experience for the clients they work with, whether they're plan participants or retail clients. The other one that I always bring up is Paul Sagany with Integrated Partners at LPL. I mean, he has created a plan very similar. There's an arc of experience. He concentrates on high net worth business owners. And he set up a program in his company where he has experts helping these business owners position their businesses for sale, helps them sell their business, helps them with the planning for retirement. That's where Income Conductor comes in, and then helps them with their estate planning to make sure that their wealth is passed on in the most tax efficient way to the next generation. So it's these firms that have more strategic initiatives that are looking at the client experience that I really admire and are achieving great success because of it.
But it's a very personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
Very personal. All right. So we're moving towards the close of our discussion here. We always like to close with the BPN Insights flash. So Sheryl, you have 60 to 90 seconds. No script, no guardrails. What is the one thing you want the wealth management world to hear right now?
Yeah, I would go back to my advice before. I mean, be willing to adapt, be open. Don't be mired in this, well, we've done it this way for 20 years, so it's worked for us, so we're just going to keep doing the same old thing. The forward successful firms are going to be always looking for new ways to improve the client experience, look at where the money is and what those clients are looking for, not inwardly to say, oh, this is what we're offering you, client, accept it. But saying, what does the client want? One of the things I heard from a leader in the industry recently was ask your clients, if you could design the perfect advisory firm, what would it look like? That's a pretty novel question, right? How many advisors go to their clients and say, tell us what you want, client. What would be the optimal experience for you? And I think that's a real key to success. So, my advice is be open, listen to your clients, ask questions, and implement to give your clients what they're looking for.
Great answer. Very thoughtful. Very thoughtful. Sheryl, thank you for joining us. For anyone who wants to learn more about Income Conductor or connect with you, where should they go?
So go to our public site, incomeconductor.com, or you can contact me personally, O'Connor at incomeconductor.com. I would love to talk to you, learn more about your firm and how we might be able to help you grow your retirement income planning specialty practice.
Sheryl, you've been a terrific guest today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chip. I appreciate it.
RJ, what a terrific discussion with Sheryl. I took away a ton from that.
Same here. There was just a lot of information, and I was furiously writing down notes. And I just found some of the things she said, they were common sense, but they struck me in a way, for example, when she said how, financial planners really haven't changed the way they've done business for several decades. And it got me thinking, there's a lot of industries that are getting caught in that trap of just doing the same things over and over again. And then the other thing that stood out to me was long-term care planning, because that's something that I'm dealing with at this point in time with both my wife and myself and our moms, and how we weren't really prepared for it. And it stands out.
It does. There are a couple takeaways that I had, and it's interesting because coming as much work as we do with technology, really, my number one point is income planning is really a conversation tool, not just a math problem, a math tool, an extract of a report. It's between the advisor and the investor customer. The second thing I found that was interesting is from her comments, decumulation is really the new accumulation race. I thought it was fascinating, especially when she touched on the amount of assets being transferred. That was an incredibly big number. And, it was interesting how she really kind of packaged it or phrased it as the descent from the summit. And I think in the past, everybody's done a great job of capturing assets. Now you got to weave in the decumulation of assets. And then finally, tools only work if the advisors believe in the framework. And obviously, some of their customers have had immense success with their framework because it really fosters a conversational, a personal interaction that builds trust. And so I thought that was pretty big. All right, we're closing here, RJ. We had a great conversation with Sheryl today. Income planning is where good advisors become great ones, and Income Conductor is making that work more accessible. I thought it was terrific. As usual, before I leave, to quote Ted Lasso, be curious, not judgmental. This is Chip Kispert, wishing you well until our next edition of BPN Insights.
Thanks, Chip, and thank you for checking out the BPN Insights podcast, which is brought to you by Beacon Strategies, LLC. For more information, visit beaconstrategies.com. And until our next BPN Insights podcast, for Chip Kispert and everyone at Beacon Strategies, I'm RJ Malik.